Tax is a very important component of managing your business. But for many entrepreneurs, taxation can be a quite scary topic and one they are really afraid of venturing into. On today's episode of the Ndalama Insights, a business show, I want to look at the basics of Zambian taxation, what your obligations are as an entrepreneur operating in Zambia, as well as some tips on how you can manage your tax. Let's get started. Hello there, entrepreneurs, and welcome to another episode of the Ndalama Insights business show, where we turn your challenges into actionable insights. Today, I'm looking at the basics of Zambian taxation, especially if you are in business. So, what are the different types of taxes that are applicable in Zambia? When it comes to Zambian tax, we have four major types of taxes that you need to be aware of. We have turnover tax, income tax, value-added tax, and finally, we have pay as you earn. Other taxes include taxes such as property transfer tax, withholding tax on your rentals or dividends, as well as mining royalty tax. So there are quite a number of other taxes that you need to be aware of. But in today's video, I'm going to focus on the four major types of taxes that you need to be aware of as an entrepreneur, especially how they affect the operations of your business. Let's look at the basics of turnover tax. What is it? Now, turnover tax is a tax that is targeted at very small businesses. These are businesses that are turning over or selling less than 800,000 kwacha. So if your business turns over or sells less than 800,000 kwacha every year, you are required to pay a turnover tax rate of 4%. Now this is a flat rate on your sales or turnover for that particular month. And you are required to remit this 4% to the Zambia Revenue Authority, who are the tax regulators in Zambia. Companies turning over more than 800,000 kwacha are required to register for income tax. Now, this tax is different from turnover tax in many ways. One of the ways is that when you are registered for income tax, you are required to pay an annual tax on your profits and not on your turnover or your sales. And that income tax percentage is dependent on the industry you are operating under. But the standard income tax rate as at 2022 is 30%. This is the tax that applies to many companies across different industries. So for you to be sure, you need to check what industry you fall under, and that is how you are going to know the exact tax rate you are required to pay on your profits every year. The lowest income tax rate you can get is under agro-processing and farming. And the rate you get under these industries is 10%. So if you want a lower tax rate, other than the standard rate of 30%, then you need to consider going into agro-processing or farming as a business, because the rate there is really minimal. It's a mere 10% compared to the standard 30% that you would actually pay in other industries. And these rates are actually a reduction from last year. As we are speaking right now, this is 2022. The standard tax rate or income tax rate as at 2021 was actually 35%. And agricultural income tax stood at 15%. And so you see that there's been a reduction in the income taxes for businesses. So I hope that the reduction in the income tax is actually going to encourage you to venture into business, especially into agro-processing, as well as farming. And even mining. If you're actually able to add value to the copper product, you will get a reduced rate of income tax. And so this is a challenge to you as an entrepreneur. And this is actually the best time for you to venture out into business. Now, when it comes to income tax, it's a tax that is paid one-off every year. However, there's a provision for you to pay provisional income tax to the ZRA. Now, provisional income tax is a tax that is paid to the Zambia Revenue Authority every quarter. It is an assessment or an estimation of how much you expect your income tax to be at the end of the year. And then you make a provisional payment or a down payment or an installment towards that assessment of your annual tax to the ZRA every quarter. So you are required to pay quarterly payments of your expected annual income tax at the end of the year every quarter to the ZRA. This means that you are required to pay 4 installments of the provisional income tax, as well as do the provisional income tax return. So when it comes to income tax, remember, it's a tax that is charged on your profits and is supposed to be paid one-off every year. However, to allow you to be able to afford or to manage your cash flow, the Zambia Revenue Authority allows you to pay quarterly provisional income taxes to them so that, they offload this burden on you, on your cash flow management. And so it becomes easier for you to actually pay the overall tax that you're required to pay at the end of the year. The next tax that you need to be aware of is the value-added tax. Now, as the name entails, VAT or value-added tax is a tax that is charged on the value added on a product or a service. Now, when it comes to VAT in Zambia, we've got 3 major categories of VAT that you need to be aware of. We have the standard rate, which is 16%, used to be 16.5%. We have the zero rating, which stands at 0%. And we have the exempt rate, which is nil. Now, many people wonder what the difference is between the zero rated and the exempt rated, which is nil. What is the difference? Are they the same? Well, there is a little bit of a difference, but I don't want to go into those details in this video. Watch out for a future video where I go into the details of value-added tax. So I'm going to look at what the difference is when I look at the actual detail of each of these taxes, particularly VAT in this case. Now, you need to meet the requirements for registration for value-added tax. For you to be registered for VAT, your turnover needs to be above a minimum threshold of 800,000 per annum or per year. And your business needs to trade in taxable products or services. Now, where you trade in taxable supplies of goods and services, and your turnover is above 800,000, you are required to register for value-added tax. It's mandatory that you register your business for value-added tax. Now, some businesses want to register for value-added tax voluntarily. That is, it's not a requirement for them to register for value-added tax. Maybe their turnover is below the threshold of 800,000 kwacha, but they would still want to register for VAT, probably because most of their inputs are actually VATable and they would want to claim back this VAT on their inputs. And so it is prudent for this business to actually register for VAT voluntarily. In that case, there are specific conditions that you must meet as laid down by the ZRA, and then you can apply for voluntary registration for VAT. As a business owner that is registered for value-added tax, there are certain obligations that you need to be aware of. First of all, you need to be able to issue taxable invoices to your customers. And you need to be able to operate or use the electronic physical device, which is a device that enables you to issue tax invoices that are directly linked to the Zambia Revenue Authority system. Another one is that you actually need to have a TPIN that identifies you as a VAT registered taxpayer. Okay, so those are the basics on value-added tax. As I've said, details in my upcoming videos when I look at each of these components of the taxes. Now, the final type of tax that I'm going to look at today is pay as you earn. Pay as you earn, simply referred to as PAYE, is a tax that is chargeable on an employee's emoluments. Now, when you look at the term emoluments, these are all the earnings that you earn in your course of doing your work. These include your basic pay, your allowances, and any other income that you make in carrying out your work. These are all added together, and the pay as you earn is charged on those earnings. When it comes to pay as you earn, you need to be aware of the 5 tax bands. These are different categories of income that have different rates at which your income is charged. So for incomes starting from 0 to 54,000, the tax rate is 0%. The next tax band, which starts at 54,001 and ends at 57,600, is charged at 25%. The third tax band, which has incomes ranging between 57,601 and goes all the way up to 82,800, is charged at a rate of 30%. Any income over 82,801 is charged at the maximum rate of 37.5%. Now, these are annual income bands. If you want to look at the monthly incomes, then you need to divide these incomes by 12 months for it to give you the monthly income. And if we take an example of the exempt threshold, this is where you get 54,000 divided by 12, giving you the 4,500 exempt amount, which is charged at 0%. So every month, as an employer, if you are an employer, you are required to submit the pay as you earn for each of your employees to the Zambia Revenue Authorities. So you are required to actually submit a return as well as a check or a transfer to the Zambia Revenue Authority for the taxes that you've deducted for pay as you earn. There you have it. Those are the 4 major categories of taxes that you need to be aware of as an entrepreneur in Zambia. Now, as an SME or as a small business owner, should you do your taxes? Is it prudent for you to actually do your own taxes? I presume that you're a very busy entrepreneur and you truly don't want to spend your valuable time on doing the actual taxes. So the wise thing for you to do is actually to employ an accountant who has a basic knowledge in taxation that can help you in submitting your tax returns as well as allowing you or enabling you to pay for your taxes. So that is just to ensure that you comply with the tax requirements. However, when it comes to tax management and tax planning, you do need to employ a much more qualified professional who's very much aware of Zambian tax to help you in tax planning. Because tax planning is not a one-off event. Unlike, your requirements to comply with the tax requirements by ZRA, where you're required to submit a return and make a payment, tax planning actually looks at how you can reduce your tax burden prudently and according or within the law. Tax planning helps you to look at how you can reduce your tax burden by taking advantage of, tax law so that your business is profitable at the end of the month. So if you want to reduce your tax burden, you do need to consult with a tax professional. A tax professional is valuable in that they are always up to date with any tax regulations and tax changes and are able to advise you throughout the course of the year on how your business should operate so that you reduce on your tax burden or your tax at the end of the year, especially if your business is registered for income tax. So you need to be aware of this distinction. Whereas you don't require a professional to submit your income tax as well as, submit the check to ZRA. When it comes to tax planning and ensuring that, you reduce your tax burden, you do need to consult with a tax professional so that they can help you understand tax law and you can reduce, your tax burden within the confines of the law. And so consider hiring a tax professional where you need tax planning advice, where it's basic tax compliance, submission of a tax return, and submission of a check or a transfer to ZRA. All you need is an accountant with a basic understanding of taxation in Zambia and not necessarily a professional. Having said all this, the final tip or insight that I would like to leave with you is that when it comes to tax, it is very important that you keep proper records. You need to keep proper records of your sales as well as your expenses, especially if your business is registered for value-added tax. Because in order for you to actually claim VAT on your inputs, which is your purchases, you need to show ZRA clearly what those inputs were. And so keep clear records of your purchase invoices as well as sales invoices in proper records, and have a system, if possible, an automated accounting system that will allow you to account for your value-added tax as well as your income tax at the end of the year. When you are able to keep proper records of your business transactions, it's easier for you to estimate how much tax you are required to pay to ZRA. And this allows you to pay, the quarterly provisional income tax. That is the requirement if your turnover is above 800,000. Well, this is all I had to share in today's video. I was looking at the basics of taxation in Zambia, particularly focusing on the 4 major tax types. As I said, there are different taxes, and in my future videos, I'm going to cover some of them. I intend to go into the details on each of these tax types. So subscribe and don't forget to click the bell icon so that you can be reminded whenever I issue a video that you'd be interested in. Maybe it's VAT, maybe it's income tax, maybe it's turnover tax, maybe it's withholding tax, maybe it's mining mineral tax. I don't know. All you need to do is subscribe to my channel and turn on the bell icon so that you can be reminded whenever I have a YouTube video out. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.